a leader of a team? Oh, really high. I've got dodgy eyesight. I can't see. Okay, so maybe about 25% of you, and that include. What about you guys over there? I want you included. Come on, all right. Okay, now hands up if you're not a leader of a team, but you are aspiring to be. All right, and hands up if you want to create a thriving environment for your team and yourself where everyone feels connected and feels the meaning of the work that they do. That should be everyone. Yes, okay, great, fantastic. Well, that's 100% of you, and that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about this evening. And I'm sure many of you are doing everything you can to build trust in your teams, but what I'm going to show you are the missing ingredients that can actually improve your results anywhere from between 13% to 67%. And you're probably thinking, why is there such a huge gap? Well, the reason why is that it depends on how hard you want to work at this. So they're results I've got from my clients. The ones that work hard at it get the best results. So what I'm going to show for you today is really how to create that, help people speak up, challenge one another, and feel a meaning in the work that they're doing. And what we're going to do a workshop. So we've got about 40-ish minutes, and it's not very much for a workshop, but you want to make sure you're sitting next to someone or you're actually with someone. So if you're sitting on your own, you might want to team up with someone as soon as you can. If you're sitting with someone you don't like, you might want to move. No, that's... All right, so I'll just warn you, I get really excited about this topic. I get really passionate. There's lots of information to share. If you're also excited and you want to learn more, I'll show you a way to do that at the end. And I should actually ask, I know I'm not mic'd up, but can everyone hear me? Because I'm talking as loud as I can. Everyone can? You're okay? Cool. It's just my big girl outside door voice. Okay, so what I want to do, just to get started, is I want to give you some stats and some research about why trust is important. Because we all know intuitively that trust is really good, but for many of us, we don't really buy into it that much. And I'm going to give you the research behind it. So one of the figures that I love, and this was actually confirmed in 2 studies, is that high trust companies have 2.5 times the revenue generation of low trust organisations. They also have a host of benefits and efficiencies. They have half the employee turnover. They have 40% less burnout, 18% more productivity, and 52% more employee engagement. But what it really does, and this is where you guys, particularly the aspiring leaders in the room and those who are current leaders, this is what's really important to get from this workshop today. And that is trust between a manager and a direct employee, a direct report, is one of the most important predictors of employee engagement. Your role as a leader is so important to the culture of your organisation. And when you get this right, when you have that environment where people trust their boss, you create an environment where not only are people performing really well, but you also get this other impact, which is really gorgeous, and that is it improves our well-being. And we hear so much at the moment about people stressed out in their jobs and mental health issues, but a 10% increase in employee trust in their company leaders has the same impact on life satisfaction as a 36% increase in pay. But you can actually pay people less if you actually build trust with them. Of course, you can't really say that in this day and age, but what people tell me is that if you have I have a lot of people that come to me and say, look, I had the decision where I had 2 offers given to me. I could take a job that was high pay, low trust culture, or I had the choice of a low pay but high trust culture. And I chose the lower pay because I wanted to wake up knowing that I was going to enjoy my job. Because we've all been there, haven't we? Who's been in a job where they were just doing it for the money and it wasn't that enjoyable? Yeah, most of us. So what I've found in the work that I do is trust is pivotal. You need it in every single relationship you have. You have to have it first before you can get anything done. And our brains need this. So if our brains actually crave feeling safe and feeling certain. And when we feel that, then it gives us that ability to actually explore the world around us. And it means we'll make decisions faster, we'll commit to that new project and launch it off the ground, and we'll actually work with others. When people tell me that people on their team are changing their minds or getting, not turning up to work or getting sick all the time or whatever's going on, I always know that that leader is not creating trust to help them feel certain. But trust is also a really expensive people problem. Now, this study came out in Harvard Business Review, and what they found was that leaders who don't inspire employees costs US $8,050 a day. Now, I was working with a PMO team that was governing a big IT project. And what was fascinating was that these people did not trust their team leader. And he was doing everything he could to build trust. And it was quite sweet, actually. But they didn't trust him because they didn't know the vision of what they were doing or the impact they were making. And this is actually really important for our brains and really important for the work that we're doing, and something that as tech leaders, sometimes you may or may not be so good at this. The next one is avoiding conflict. Now, when we ignore people problems and don't want to talk about it because we don't want to start arguments, that costs $7,900. When there are silos that cause teams to not share insights, that's $7,700. When people aren't, are underperforming and not giving feedback by their boss because their boss doesn't want to because it's a really hard thing to do, that costs $7,600. And when you have people that self-censor because they don't want to, talk up about the critical issues, that costs $7,500 a day. But when you have people doing busy work, pretending to be busy, cause distrust with everyone around them who has to work really hard, that costs $6,300. But when it comes to trust, we have to define it. Now, I only work in the space of trust at work. And in the work that I do, where I see a lot of organisations struggle, is that when they try to repair trust, everyone can't sort of agree on what trust means. Because if I were to ask everyone in this room what does trust mean, you'd all come up with different things. So we really need to define it. For some of the work that I do, we even spend half a day to work this out. But this is the one that I work with, and I'm going to get everyone aligned in the room. And it's the best definition I've come up with so far because it's a work in progress. But it really is the ability for everyone in an organisation to confidently rely on and predict that others will do the right thing and make good on their promises. Because in a low-risk situation, trust isn't an issue. It's once you move into high risk, once you move into change, if you have a merger and acquisition, if you have a new team lead, a new boss, a new something, a restructure, then people start freaking out in their heads. And they're asking things like, oh, can I trust my boss to give me that promotion she promised? Can I trust my teammates to be there for me if I make a mistake? And that's what you have to deal with. So what I want to do now is I want to do a little activity, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and you've got 1 minute each. So team up with someone beside you. Hopefully you don't know that person. And I want you to ask the question, why did you get into IT or whatever profession you're in? And then ask the second question, what unique or interesting challenges did you experience to acquire your qualification? So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. Now, a word of warning, if you are the first person, well, you don't take up that 2 minutes, because that does not build trust. You've got to let the other person speak. All right, so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do that, and then we'll reconvene. And I'll press a button in the middle so you know when to swap. All right, the reason why I so wanted you to answer those 2 questions, there's a reason for it. So when you think about building trust, what do you think is more important? Being vulnerable first, then you build trust? Or is it that you have to trust the person first before you can be vulnerable? Trust first? Who else thinks trust first? 40%, I think it was. Okay. So if you look at the research, you actually have to be vulnerable first, and then you build trust. But we kind of think it's the other way around. We think that we have to trust the person before we can be vulnerable. But for many leaders that I work with, being vulnerable first is really difficult. And so I ask these questions a lot out of people. I find typically most people don't ask the first one, or they answer a different question. That's kind of normal. But when you actually get vulnerable, which is hard, you actually get the best results. So just for those of you who struggled to be vulnerable and share, and I know most of you didn't, but for those that did, that can often be a blind spot that can stop you from really improving your relationships and your results at work. And it's something that you might want to look at because it's one of those things that we don't know is even happening. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to go back in time. 50,000, 100,000 years ago, when humans were in the African steppe. Now back then, life was pretty tough. You didn't know if you were going to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or bitten by a snake. And so as human beings, we learnt that if we wanted to survive the night, we had to trust that people would look out for us, and they had to trust that we would look out for them. And so as human beings, we are actually biologically programmed to want to be with other people. And if you think about your life, the best times you've ever had are when you're with other people. Hopefully it's not when you're alone, but usually generally it's when we're other people. And we're doing work that makes us feel good and we feel like we're, achieving something. And when we actually feel that, we actually feel pride. And it's due to the chemical serotonin, which you're probably all aware of. So when you feel like you're in a team that's making an impact, that's going somewhere, it actually makes you feel really good. And this serotonin, what it does is it makes us feel more accountable to the people that we're with. So you're more likely to try and do a really good job because you want to please your team members. People will often say to me, oh, I worked really hard on this project, worked really long hours. I don't like the company I work with, but I really care about my team members. And when we do that, when our team members actually appreciate us and actually like the work that we're doing, then we actually feel, oxytocin starts running through us and we feel love and trust, and it creates this bond. And what it does is that we are more likely to do acts of generosity. And the more we do that, the more other people trust us. And it's this beautiful virtuous cycle that we're constantly trying to, help each other out. When teams aren't working well is when people don't really care and they don't put in the extra work. And it actually lights up the reward part of our brain. So it feels really good and it actually motivates us to want to do this even more. But then there's dopamine, and this is all about getting work done. Now, for those of you who are addicted to your phones and you keep looking at messages and checking who's texted you and all that sort of stuff, and you hear those little dings, that really exciting feeling, that's so addictive. This is due to dopamine. And it's a reward thing. And it's the same with at work. Now, I work with a lot of IT people, and it's all about delivery, all about ticking things off your checklist. It feels good. You feel a sense of accomplishment. But the thing is that sometimes we get so addicted to making the numbers that we forget about the people. And what you'll find is that, particularly if you're very technically driven, you never, through your schooling system, learnt that it's not about you all the time. Our whole schooling system is all about our results and what we're accomplishing. And we haven't really been taught how to bring other people along with us. And you get these dopamine-fueled leaders who are so into the process, not the people. Delivery is king. And I work in quite a few organisations trying to do agile transformation, but they can't quite get it because the leaders are making out that they believe in agile, but they still are burning people in the process. And what happens when this happens is that it actually increases stress because it floods our bodies with cortisol. And so people who are in these situations are thinking, what's the threat? What's the threat? Oh my gosh, it's my boss, I've got to avoid him. And they'll pull back and they won't work so hard because the boss is perceived as a threat. So it really is a balancing act. So for all of you who are aspiring, I keep on just saying inspiring, but it's aspiring, who are aspiring leaders, the real balancing act, and for those of you who are leaders, you've really got to balance that love of accomplishing things and ticking things off to realising that you need to bring people along for the ride. and that actually going above and beyond what is expected of you and doing those acts of generosity actually creates a really trustworthy environment. Because when we don't do that, you'll find that people will have more stress, they'll close down, they won't contribute. So if you're a boss and there's some big issue happening but people don't trust you, they'll hold back from telling you and you'll be the last one to find out. And then also really a good sign that there's low trust is where you have a lot of fear and a lot of gossip and blame. But when you do have trust, you'll find teams are really good at collaboration, people are able to exchange ideas and discuss difficult issues and more willing to put themselves at risk and help others. So as a leader, it really is a challenge to do this, and it's really one where you've really got to stop this urge of that individual achievement. And if you're technically focused, this is really hard because this is how you've basically lived your last SIT school, because it's always been about your results and what you're achieving and what you know. But we need to learn to bring other people on board. And it's really about creating an environment of reward rather than risk. Now, I work with a lot of leaders, things happen, things in your life, there might be personal problems or just stress with a project, and we don't even realise that we're creating a risky environment for others. That coming up to us, we might bark at them or yell at them or treat them in a way that's, we dismiss their ideas, and it will really stop people from opening up. And we have to look at that. And it's also making the decision in your head that you can actually get more out of people than you can do alone. And it's really about how you interact with people rather than how you react. So what I want to do before we go into the next activity is I want to just take you through a framework that I've developed over the last 8 years. And this framework actually came from a lot of the work I was doing with IT leaders. I was coaching this one particular guy, and he had read all the books on trust. And he could, almost, memorize stuff and tell me all this stuff, but it was all theory. He was absolutely shit at building trust. He had no idea. But he knew all the theory, but it was too complicated. And this is what I was finding time and time again, that people were overcomplicating things. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but you guys are in IT, you love all your processes and systems, and sometimes you overcomplicate it rather than simplify it. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. I'm married to a mad inventor / engineer / IT person when he feels like it, and he overcomplicates everything. Yeah. And it's just how we do things sometimes, because it doesn't feel important enough unless it's complicated. So what I want to do is I want to take you through this framework that is much simpler to understand so that you can actually start implementing these ideas in your teams. And so this is 6 trust drivers, and we'll go through each of these individually. But the first one is to do with support. Now, we trust people who care about us. We don't trust people who are self-interested. And it's like that really weird winter Olympic game called curling. And so this guy here with the broom, he's a curler. So are his friends. And what they do is they sweep the ice and they remove the obstacles so that that stone can just glide effortlessly through goal. And they work as a team to do that. And this is what you want to do as a leader. Even if you're not a leader, you still want to do this. You want to empower, you want to enable the people around you to be able to do their best work. You don't want to create more bureaucracy or more issues or more roadblocks. You want to help break through that. You also want to help people know that you're there to support them in their careers, that you're interested in them as people as well. And then the next one is united to solve customer problems. Now, I know many of you are in design, custom design, led thinking, blah, blah, blah phrases. I'm not techie, so sorry. But this is actually, I love this, and this is so important because I work with other people in other departments and they don't quite get that. I've been an entrepreneur for 18 years, so I've always had to do that, and it's something that I always work with on my teams. But the issue is when you work in big companies, you get so many processes and systems that are developed to protect the company that people forget about the customer, particularly if you're in a support function. And so as a leader, it's really critical that you can clearly communicate to people
why they're doing the work that matters, and how that's connected to the customer and how you're making their lives better. And sometimes in the daily work, people don't get that. I was working with this project team, and the issues that they were facing with, they were saying, well, we don't know what this IT project is really doing. We don't know what our contribution is doing for the organisation. It feels like we don't matter. I'm not emotionally connected. I'm holding back. I'm just coming in for the day. That's it. And you as leaders, if you really want to make a difference, being able to connect the why and the customer problem that you're solving is so important. And I know Jeremy mentioned that briefly before. And, you know, when you do that, people understand the meaning of the work that they're doing and the value as well. Really good for people's well-being. Then the next one is clarity. Now, this is to do with communication, which is all about reducing ambiguity and uncertainty. Now, the first thing that you have to be aware of, to be clear in communication, you have to have clarity of thinking, which Jeremy also mentioned as well. So you need to have that thinking time. And then once you're clear on what needs to be done, you're much better at communicating the roles, the tasks, the vision, and where you're going and why. And this is really important to stop people from freaking out and thinking in their heads that everything's a disaster, because that's where people go. The next one is candour. So you can't fix a problem if you're not talking about it. Unfortunately, most people are too afraid to talk about some of the issues or concerns because they're not in a psychologically safe space. So you need to, as a leader, model the right candid behaviours. You need to encourage your team members to actually challenge you. You actually need to be vulnerable. You need to admit when you've made a mistake. And when you do that, when people see that, they will also do that as well. And then the next one is empowered to grow. Now, you can't grow a company if the people within it aren't growing. How can you create a culture of learning? Now, with the space that you guys are in, knowledge is changing. You know, updates, I think the latest study was every 18 months for your industry. Does that sound about right? And so it doesn't matter so much. Knowledge acquisition, knowledge retention, sorry, not that important. Being the smartest person technically, you know, is it going to matter in a year, 18 months? Probably not. But your biggest role that you have to move into is knowledge acquisition. You want to be able to get the knowledge out of your people. You want to ensure that there's this culture of learning, that you're having those debriefs, that you're iterating, you're doing all those things, but you're even making sure people have time to go off and learn. I find a lot of IT leaders or digital leaders in this space, they're saying, oh, this project's too important, you can't go, you're my resource. But it's really important to have that learning going on, building up that muscle. And then dependable. This is, of course, what trust is all about. But this is about reducing silos. And so many companies I've worked with, a lot of leaders don't even think about this, and where their team is letting other teams down. You know, how can you reduce that silo mindset? How can you make sure that even your team members are thinking about other departments and the impact they're making? So with this framework, of course, it's simple theoretically, but there's lots of different facets to it. But what I find with a lot of companies, what they'll do to fix things in this space is they'll go, right, we've got a candour issue. People aren't speaking up. Let's put them on a speaking up course. But if you're not getting leaders to actually care about people, if you're not getting leaders to actually be focused on the customer problem or be clear in their thinking and communication, empowering people to learn and being reliable, then it's a waste of time. You're only getting a short-term result rather than a long-term one. So what I want you to do now is, with the person beside you, I want you, oh God, this is a new clicker and I'm not very good at using it. It's pretty, it's gold. I actually have a rose gold one as well, apparently, but that wasn't available to me today because someone else took it. That was a really girly comment, sorry. I just thought I had to, put a bit more feminine energy in the room. Okay, so I don't know where that comes from. I haven't even been drinking. All right, before everyone runs off on me and goes to the bar, what I want you to do with the person beside you is I want you just to think about and talk about which of these two drivers you need to focus on. If you're a leader, there might be a couple of them you want to focus on. If you're not a leader, which would you want to work on, or which do you think your team needs to work on? So I'm going to give you just a few minutes just to have a chat about that, and then we'll reconvene. Okay, well, what I'll do is just to finish up, I just want to give you a little bit of a summary, and that for those of you who are leaders or you're aspiring to be one, it really is a gift. You know, in the past, being a leader was seen as a status symbol. It's all about the extra money, you've got extra power, people have to trust you. But the tables have turned. You don't automatically get trust now when you're a leader. You've actually got to work on it. The best leaders that I've researched and worked with, they're constantly thinking about how to build trust with people on a weekly basis. And what they're so scared of is that they realise that if they create distrust in any way or do something wrong, it is so much harder to fix things. Trust, when it's broken, is really hard to fix. So when you are a leader, you actually have this ability to actually create that thriving environment. For those of you who might be in not very nice cultures that you want to complain about, you know, the reality is you can control the environment around your team. You can create that wonderful culture. You know, Melinda Gates, Bill Gates' wife, when she was at Microsoft, she couldn't stand it. She said that the culture was terrible. And she wanted to leave. And then she made the decision that she was going to just create a really great environment for her team and just work well with her team. And so in the end, what happened was everyone wanted to work with her. And she was able to attract the best people and always be able to perform at such a higher level than all the other teams. So you can start small that way and be that champion that can then actually start to improve things across the organisation. It's one of the tactics I've used in some organisations I've worked with. So I just want you to realise that it is a gift. You have this ability to improve people's lives and to help them feel the meaning in the work that they're doing, and that they're actually making a difference. And it will make you feel so much better as well. And so just to end up, I know that I mentioned that for those of you who want more information, I could share a way of how you can do that. If any of you have a mission critical project or something that you really desperately want to talk to me about, or there are issues and you don't know what to do, feel free to have a chat with me. I'm going to be here after this and drinks. I don't bite, so I love having chats, so you can come up and say hello. That's all good. And for those of you who are really interested in the topic and just want more information, I just want to give you some free stuff that you can access if you'd like it. I've got a working in silos calculator. If for those of you who might be interested in the costs when you're working with other teams and things aren't working that well, you can get access to that. And there's also a white paper that has some stats for those people who like more of a business case study approach. So if you're interested in any of those, all you have to do is text your first name, last name and email address to 0438 986 63. And if you want to link in with me or anything like that, you're welcome to do that as well. So I'm now ready for questions.